Hello, everybody. I know there's nobody on right now. This is we're just gonna hit some balls for a little bit and see if anybody shows up. This is the second Monday night question and answer slash practice session for Easy Street Billiards. I am Sean Lewis, and this is Vic. We are Easy Street Billiards,
Hello.
and we're basically taking. Is the screen good? I feel like it moved.
Yeah, it's a little bit off to the side.
We're basically taking the subject matter, initial subject matter for these videos off of the school.com Easy Street Billiards group. If you have an interest in joining the group for free and having your own input into this, then you can look in the description below for the website link. Maybe we'll do a pinned link someday. Otherwise, anybody that shows up can throw their voice in, and then we'll go down the list and talk about whatever anybody wants to talk about. And other than that, I'm just gonna hit some balls for a second. Is there anybody on yet, Vicky?
No, I'm sharing it to the Easy
Okay.
Street thing. And then I'm sharing it to mine. Can you share it to yours?
I don't have my phone,
Oh.
but I mean it should be fine. It doesn't have to be everybody.
Should I say ask me anything?
Sure. Well, if anybody wants to, I guess they can just rewind at this point. So I'm just gonna go and start. I wanted to start talking about somebody. The main thing that came up that was inputted by the community was the concept of trusting your stroke. So I wanted to talk about that, and this could be lengthy, really, because I think it speaks a little bit deeper than just staying down on the ball, if that makes sense. To me, trusting your stroke has to do with kind of like being in alignment with the situation where you're allowing yourself to hit the ball the way you know you're supposed to without being in your own way enough to deviate and try to catch yourself in the act of making a mistake, and then moving, changing your motion in any way because you're maybe overthinking or whatever. And obviously, anytime you're overthinking, you're having conflicting thoughts. Then obviously, you're not trusting yourself, because if you had a trust in what you're doing, then there'd only be one singular thought that you really have to worry about. You're just trying to accomplish the goal. And I think that trusting your stroke has a lot to do with making a clear decision more so than anything else. If you know that you're doing your best as far as your decision making goes, and that you know your process by which you execute your shooting, then it's easier to trust your stroke than if you don't. So I think that part of the trust is that you gotta believe that what you're doing is your best process, so that there's no better process that you might try to utilize that then would be cause possible distrust. So you just kind of have to eventually either recognize what you're doing when you're playing your best game, and then do your best to approximate that, which would obviously require you to trust that whatever you're doing is actually going to work. And a lot of that comes to talking about your emotional condition, where it's like if you're in an anxiety, or frustration or anger or resentment or whatever, you're feeling that way through like whatever that happened. Maybe they got lucky, or you've been missing shots and you don't know why, and it's starting to build, then that emotion is what's causing you to not be able to trust your stroke. If you were calm and relaxed and knew that each time you shoot your shot that you're like picking the best pattern that and you're going to get down and you're going to shoot the shot as comfortably and relaxed and with your highest self in mind and in control, that's your trusting self. You just have to kind of get in the mode of just realizing that in order to trust yourself, there can only be one person at the helm. You can't be divided in what you're doing. In the way that you can convince yourself that you are unified in one person instead of trying to like acquiesce maybe to what you think might be the best shot based on what other people think or whatever it is that's causing you to second guess your decision making. But I'll tell you that, in my opinion, is that if you're going to second guess yourself, you're just creating the habit of doing that, and that the only way to stop second guessing yourself is that you need to use your gut instinct all the time and just shoot the shot that's in front of you without really worrying about whether or not there's other shots. Now, in order to use that and not be totally failing about it, you have to go about it a certain way where your intention is to hone your instincts and make your instincts the right shot, the best shot that you know. And the only way to do that is by shooting a lot of shots that turn out to be not that. And then you prevent yourself from then doing that again by realizing that when I did it that way, that wasn't the result that I wanted to get, not my desired result. And even though it wasn't my desired result, I'm actually getting closer to having trust in my game because I'm eliminating those undesired results and I'm adding to it an element of habit where I'm going to shoot my instinctual shot, and then when things don't turn out the way I want, then I'm going to make corrections for next time. And then now my system involves me having to use my initial assessment and go with it in order to build trust in my game. Because if I don't trust myself, then I have to like start second guessing myself, because obviously if you're not trusting, then you have to look for other options. And if you're looking for other options, then you're not trusting, so you can't really do that so much. Or you can decide, what I like to do is I like to not reserve judgment about what I'm going to do until I've acquired all the information and I've answered all the questions that I have about what might be different choices that I should make. For instance, on this table right here, the only real question mark is like how easily can I get at this 8-ball, I would say. And everything is pretty lined up. Like if I can make the 1 and then come back out for the 2, there's a lot of different stuff that I could do. Potentially, I could actually use to get a little bit higher up right here. And then now I can use draw, hit the 2 a little bit full, and then try to come in and create more space here and like bust into these balls. And then hopefully I'll end up with the shot on the 3, which could happen, or I could just avoid that altogether by getting position where I can just make this cut shot, or I can even play for the bank, whatever I choose to. My point being is that you're actually doing the work to analyze and study the table, because there are some questions that need to be answered in pretty much every rack that you see. I mean, the balls are not always just going to be laying out to where you can hit each ball into any one of 6 pockets, and that doesn't even matter where you play position to, as long as you have a shot on the next ball and you can see it, you can run out. You don't have to think, and thus there's no way to distrust yourself. So every shot you shoot should be with trust, because it doesn't even matter where the balls go.
You just have to trust that your ball pocketing is good enough to make the next shot, and then you should be able to continue the run, and thus there's no real distrust there. However, when there are questions to answer and you don't answer them, you know that you haven't answered them instinctively, even if you don't consciously think about it that way. If you are down on this ball and you haven't decided, you don't even know necessarily, say this is the 8 and the 9, let's say this is the 3 ball here, and you haven't decided how you're going to get on this ball to make it, to continue your run, and then you're shooting the 1 to end up in whatever position you decide to before you've decided how you're going to interact with the next ball, then there's an element there where if you were like thinking forward to the next shot, like you would be, in normal circumstances, as you're going to plan, a little bit, then you got to answer the question. And if you don't, and then you just play a position for anywhere, now you're forced to accept whatever position you got, which might not be as good as the one you could have gone for to get you in a better position to complete your run, and that you might not recognize it instinctually that that's what's happening, but by not acquiring that information before you shoot, in your heart of hearts most of the time that you could have gotten to a better position had you just thought about it and decided that I was like, oh, I'm actually going to make this ball, and then I'm going to play to a certain spot on the table, or maybe it's not so easy, like this ball is a little bit tough to pocket, and then they'll have a lot of options on the 3 in this situation, so it's not really that important. It's more important to make this ball, but I know that because I've done the assessment, and now when I get down on this, I can focus on making this ball and just coming out to where I'm like can cue off the rail. I don't want to be stuck to this rail, so I'm just going to float the ball down here, even though it's easier to make it that way maybe. I need to stay off the rail because I need to leave myself options because I don't know exactly where it's going to end up. And if I can leave myself a nice cueing place for my hand, my bridge hand, then that'll just make the next shot easier. If you're playing a shot off the rail because you're so worried about making the ball, that's an area where you gotta figure out how to get off the rail, get your cueing better for the next shot at least, so that then your next shot becomes easier just through being able to bridge normally, have a normal stroke, be able to not have to be stretched out over the table, etc. Which is like not really basic because the percentage that you're decreasing yourself to make the next shot or the next position is not so much, but pool is over the long run, each little better decision you make adds up into a huge thing. Because every shot you shoot that's a little bit easier is just that much more often that you're going to execute and get there. So, anyways, I missed that ball because I'm talking. But I came out, and now I could, had I decided that I wanted to play that shot to break the 9 out, that's where I'm at right now because I was trying that, but I should have spent a little bit more energy trying to make this ball. So here, I could just play to shoot and play the 3 and then run these balls out and then play this thin cut, but maybe I feel like I can be a little bit more aggressive here and just bump this ball out. Say with, I can just play rail first, thin the 2, and then play a little bit of speed, and it's like almost guaranteed to kind of go into the zone where the 8 and the 9 are at and move one of them. And the cue ball is going to hit the rail and then come up a little bit. So I end up a little bit steep on this ball, but now I've moved the 9 out, and now the 8 is way more open, so where like I've sacrificed this shot being a little bit tougher for the later better position, where if I can get an easier shot on the 8, then now I don't have to come back around and get back up here for the 9. Now the 9 goes in the side or that side or this corner fairly easily. You can go short side a little bit easier, and now all I have to do is get to this, get a little bit further on, where I did leave myself a little bit tough here. But honestly, the 4 is going to move here, but you can just take your licks, right? That was a choice, and I decided, and I have to just trust that I can continue to get out. And obviously, over time, your decision making it'll show you whether or not you did the right thing. To me, if I was probably playing in a serious match, I wouldn't have shot that shot to bump it over here. But for purposes of learning, I want to learn how to hit this ball rail first and be accurate, understanding where these balls are going to hit. Had I known that exact angle was going to happen, all I would have had to do to get better on the 3 is hit that shot harder, and then the cue ball would be up here. and I might even be like really sitting nice. So partly by shooting that shot, because I'm practicing, I'm learning about what I'm doing, so that later when it's more important, I can actually make a good decision because I've actually studied these situations when it's not important, which is when you're practicing. You know, and then now I put myself in a tougher situation, which if I was practicing and just playing to run these balls out and thin the 8, I would have gotten way better on the 3, but now I'm challenging myself to take a tougher out so that I can like work on my skill. Like this 3-ball cut and bumping into the 4, we don't really know exactly where it's going to go. You know, I think it's going to thinly hit the 3 or the 4 with the left edge of the cue ball, but I have to bear down and just make this ball, so I can't quite predict exactly what's going to happen. But I'm going to do my best to think about it. So it looks to me like the 4 is going to travel like to this area. The cue ball is going to float off of it, and then maybe if it hits the 7, I'm probably in trouble. But if it doesn't hit the 7, it comes out and comes back, I'm going to be okay. Because then I'll be able to shoot the 4 here, and then hopefully it's not too tough to come back up for the 6. That's what I see. And all this is just like through observing where the tangent line is and the likely spot. You know, and now that I've decided, okay, that's the shot, now I can come back over here and actually look just to make sure that my spot is proper, so that when I get down, I don't have any question marks. I know this is what I want to do. I could have banked it, I could have played safe, but this is the shot, right? And see, I played too heavily to make that go here. And the 4 kind of did what I wanted it to do. And anyways, we just move on, because it's not important so much. It's more about the thought process. Some of the time, you just work on your thinking. And then, yeah, you're not going to shoot as well, maybe, for that session. But if you develop your thinking, then eventually you'll have that set up, and then now your thinking is going to just be better. So I'm going to play for here. High, left. Yeah, now, say I had gotten there, see now it's like, you'd be like, well, this is still way easier. Had I not moved the 9 earlier, I'd be playing for a way smaller window, and then this shot would be a lot touchier, because I might not be able to get as straight as this. And then when I shoot that shot, now it might be tougher for me to get the angle that I want. But now I can just come across. And now from pretty much anywhere, see now I can just draw back a few inches. If I had left myself an angle, I could have gone forward. You know, it doesn't even matter so much. Like drawing to here, it's all way easier. The 9 was close to this rail. That's, you know, part of moving that thought process was that. So, you know, if you get through the rack, you know, partly it's like, how did I do it? Like, was my thinking good? You know, in that I thought my thought process was good, but obviously I didn't execute as well as I could have. But the thought process is what allows you to trust your stroke and not care so much about the result, because it's more about lining up your like calculations. That's what makes you trust your stroke, is being calculated properly and knowing that you're doing it the way that you're best at now analyzing things. Anybody on there?
Mm-hmm.
Anybody say anything yet? No?
No,
Who's on there? Did you see?
I can't see.
Oh.
It doesn't tell me, it just tells me there's one other person. For a second you had 2, and then both dropped off, and then we got 1 back,
All right.
so.
Well, I appreciate whoever's on here. See, I gotta plug my phone in and make sure my battery stays on. Yeah, the main thing that we're going to talk about, the trust in the stroke thing. And that goes pretty deep, you know. Feeling like that you can rely on certain things in your game is part of the trust of it. At the same time, it does go much deeper than that. I mean, to me, if you have total, complete trust in yourself, then
that means that you've really gotten to the point where you have accepted who you are completely, and that you've forgiven yourself for not being perfect completely, and that you apply love in everything you do as completely as you can, knowing that your highest ideal self is that person, and that all we can do is try to strive to be our best selves all the time. And a lot of that is just a process of learning through experiencing life and doing things. Like each shot you shoot is an opportunity to like live your best life. You shoot the shot and everything happens exactly the way you planned for it. Your desired reality can come to fruition every time you shoot a shot. The thing is that if you don't plan it out completely, and then other stuff, random stuff happens that you didn't account for, well, you hit the ball, man. You did all of that stuff. And if you had thought about it or knew enough, theoretically speaking, there'd be no situations that happened that were not outside of your control. You were controlling completely the whole thing. And with this game, we can only really know so much. It takes a lifetime, and you can continue to learn the whole time and not have it all figured out. So here, the 8 is kind of in a weird spot if I try to shoot the 3 into it. What I'm going to do here is try to play the 2 into the 8 to leave myself a shot to go from the 2 to the 3, and then not have to worry about playing the 3 into the 8 and then having to play the 3 from wherever it lies and the cue ball wherever it lies, if that makes sense. Because from here, shooting full into the 8, the 2 ball doesn't go very far, but from over here, cutting the 3 into the 8 to makes it go a lot further. So the 2 is actually more controllable than the 3. And then the likely position for the 2 to end up, it's pretty routine to go from the 2 to the 3 from this spot. Now I gotta actually try to bump the 5, because I want to just get to that angle. Yeah, almost bump it, right? This is okay. The thing here is that if I use too much draw, I might bump into the 5. So what I got to do is play into the rail, and then into this rail, and then back up here to get the proper angle that I want. So this, it's kind of a thin hit. Like your tangent is here. All you need to do is just apply just a touch of draw and a little bit of right English to get yourself to hit maybe like an 1/8 of an inch higher, and then the turn will come up here. If you use too much spin, you'll hit the bottom of the 5, and that'll send you not into the right place. And this is just, you can't hit it that hard. You gotta just float the 3 ball. So here, I actually like this natural playing the 4 here and then going into the rail and then back over to this side to play the 5 in the side here, so that being below, then my natural angle will be to come up forward into where the 6 is, and then get past the line so that I can come back over to this side, back where the 5 is at, to shoot the 7, and then have the cue ball come over here. And all that is easy and just rolling ball shots if I just shoot this shot to play across here instead of maybe trying to draw and play back to the spot where the cue ball is at. And then from there, the 5 to the 6, depending on what angle you get, you might end up a little bit tricky. Here, all you got to do is just make sure you get over to this side pretty much, which is just high left. So I ended up a little bit too high, which is fine. Now you just got to make sure you play right to here, which is just make it and just roll up 3 or 4 or 5 inches. This is like about the worst spot that you could end up in, and this is totally as good as it gets. So it's like one of those things where it's like, by analyzing completely what I'm doing, taking out all the question marks, there's just nothing not to trust. If you get to where you're a little bit nervous and you don't really look at the complete scenario,
it's easy to distrust exactly what you're doing because you don't have all the information. And when you're more nervous, you want more information, and you can't get it. So then you can't really trust yourself because you know there's more that you can't see, you know, that you're not accounting for, and all that stuff is what builds into the distrust and not knowing what you're going to do. So here I'm going to play. I got to draw it a little bit to not bump into the 7. Ideally, I'd like to get just a little bit below it and then come out. And then maybe I don't come out enough and I have to shoot the 7 all the way down and then play here. And if I can come out more, I think I'm actually going to play the 7 to play it all the way down and end up like this. I could play it to cut it and come around, but to me, I'd rather just accept a little bit of a tougher shot and then not have to travel my cue ball so far to get really nice on the money ball, because I don't want to move the cue ball a lot to get on the 9 unless I have to. I'd really rather just be a stop shot position, obviously. So this is just going to be straight draw. Yeah, see now it's like basically straight in. Anywhere from here to here is good, right? Now I don't have to cut into the side. Yeah, I'd like to, it's easy. But see now if I just draw the ball, my cue ball is going to end up like right here. This is the shot that you want. You don't want to do some tough stuff, you know? And this shot, if you had planned for it, you'd be looking at it like, this is exactly where I wanted to be. Yeah, I could have cut it in the side, but truthfully, that position was much tougher on the 6. So this is the shot that I like now, you know? And here you are, you know? And yeah, you had to accept 2 more difficult pocketing situations, but if that all leads you to an easy 9 ball, then you know, it makes sense to me. So that's kind of where I try to like make it a little bit easier. And then it allows me to trust myself a little bit, you know, and you're just leaving yourself shots that you know how to do. You know, you don't want to just play over to a weird spot and then now you're forced to shoot some kind of a crazy, you know, 3-rail position into a small zone, you know, when you could have just played a little bit of a different spot and now you're playing like a 1-rail position into a huge zone. You know, but a lot of that just has to do with you gotta spend time, you know, studying, you know, your own kind of way you look at things, and then, you know, find out what kind of strokes you like to use, and then you sort of just play your position around that. So I'm just going to move this to here because I almost had a shot. So here, I could play forward, but then I'm in traffic with these balls. So I think even though drawing it is a little bit touchier with the position, because you might come across and get a little bit too far, because of where the 3 is, I think it's worth it to risk it. The 5 is a little bit tight on the 4, but I think that getting underneath here or over on this side are both easy to get to the 5, so it's not really that big of a deal. The main thing is I think you want to be able to shoot this 3 and not have to be queued up over off the rail or on the 5. And the other thing that could happen if I hit this, I could potentially bump the 5 and open the 4 up slightly too, so that makes it something to think about. So I'm just going to try to draw back to straight in, which is what I want. Then I'm going to have to be about right here. Maybe a little bit past it. See, the 5 is kind of interfering with my bridging if I hit it exactly where I want to. But if I hit it and get straight in, yeah, see if I get straight in, I'm fine, or over here, it's fine. So I actually have to play for like this spot right here. It's a little bit tight to draw there though. See if I can do it. See, now I'm underneath, which means that I gotta play over here now to this spot. And I like playing it into this rail. The spot that I like here is to play this angle so I can go 1, 2, back to the middle. So here all this is just basically low and just playing the natural tangent line down this way into this rail, hitting the rail right about here in between the second and third diamond, and then coming off it like a foot. And that's just a stun shot. Just center and low and playing your speed. Pretty close. Hit a little bit past it, but I had the angle that I wanted. Now it's just a natural. It's a little bit thinner than a half ball hit. I wanted it a half ball hit, but that's fine. Now you just play high ball, touch of right, I like a touch of left here, so that I can make sure that I don't come up short and hit the 8. I need to get past the 8 and hit here on the rail, and it makes it easier to do that by just applying just a little bit of left English, so it doesn't come up straight up the table. But I have to understand that if I do that, it might apply a little bit more spin, and I want to get roughly straight on the 5. If I get too funny, I could interfere with the 9, and if I don't come up high enough, it could be a little bit thin. This is not too bad. I got to get at least to here, which is pretty easy to do, since I am playing basically for like this spot. See, I actually hit it too soft and it just didn't do what I needed it to do. So, for purposes of this, we're going to move that. That was unfortunate. I hit that pretty soft. So I could play with right English and come over here, which is a really kind of like throwing the 5 and the other shot to shoot. You could bank it, or you could use like left English and then just try to come back and forth. Pretty tricky shot, really, no matter what you do. That's why you need to come up a little bit further. But I think I'm just going to play this with right English. And I'm actually going to probably play it to here so I can hit a little bit harder. Too thin. Yeah, that was a little bit tough. Anybody say anything yet?
No,
Nope.
there's nobody on.
Nice. What time is it?
7:32. 3. That person just dropped off like 2 or 3 minutes ago,
That's all good. Everybody's busy at league.
Well, we know Rachel is. Well, I don't know. Well, yeah, I think she's.
Yeah, I guess the only thing that I was going to talk about, just to take up the time, was aiming. Talk about aiming and how people ask about like a system, and I would say that roughly speaking, if I had an aiming system, I'd call it the ghost ball, but it's more like trial and error visualization than anything. If I am shooting this straight in ball, which is something that, this is basically like the Mighty X, except for there's only 2. I should probably put the other ones just to create the X so everyone can enjoy it. What I'm trying to do is just stun the cue ball when it hits the 6 so that it ends up in the spot where the 6 is at. The cue ball replacement drill, I think it's some people call it, but it's just a stun shot. But what I try to do with the aiming, speaking of the way it is I try to see the cue ball travel away from me when I hit it. And that I I track the path of it, and I try to see through just standing here if I was to hit it, where it would hit, almost like a laser pointer that's like as wide as the cue ball that just points out, and then when it hits whatever that hits, then you know, okay, well, it's not dead center. Dead center would make the 6 go straight at it, but if I'm like lined up a little bit to the right of that, now it's aiming the 6 here. But as I track the cue ball to different spots, in turn the 6 is aiming to different spots. So every time I move, I see the 6 aim to a different location. So when I'm aiming it, all I do is I move to the spot where it was not going to go. Like where I'm lined up here is actually pointing to the right point. And then when I move over here, now it's to the left point. So then between that is the middle of the pocket, roughly speaking. And now that I'm on that point, I just have to move forward and straight down into the shot. And then trust your stroke. Obviously it didn't work that time. That's not exactly how I do it. But speaking towards seeing it, that's roughly one way to know how you are. What I'm doing is I can see that, but once I'm attached to it, I got to spend a little bit of time seeing the actual shot, which is once you've decided, okay, this is the angle, then you got to like, okay, this is what my commitment is that you're going to shoot the 6 ball and you're going to hit it straight at, you know, dead full, and then the cue ball is going to stun forward one rotation. So when I hit this ball, what I'm trying to visualize beforehand is actually how low I have to hit it to make it spin the proper amount to hit that ball, and actually what stroke I'm going to use. So I think if I hit it a certain power in my hand, in my mind, not with my hand because I don't do this necessarily. That's, sometimes I do like you just kind of like a warm-up thing where you're like trying to hit the ball with your mind, and then if I actually did that when I was down, like what would happen? And that's kind of the connecting to that, your kinetic system to the future desired reality you're trying to accomplish. So what I try to do is like remember the shot the way that it is in my mind, and then once I'm like hitting it and the cue ball's going where I want, now I can just get to that spot and get down and hit the shot. Just the same way that I visualized it. And it's not really like you're aiming in the sense of like I'm trying to hit a certain point, but it's more like once the balls start moving, I want them to be going in a certain direction, and all I'm trying to do is just like predict basically that when I get down here and hit this ball, that it's going to do what it looks like it's supposed to do, which is, you know, have the backspin and go straight at the 8. Right? And it's not so much that you're like trying to make it, it's just like more like an experiment where you're hitting the ball and you're seeing where it goes, and this is just a test. If I actually did hit it straight at the 1 with, you know, the right tuning below and no right or left, then it should do exactly what my prediction is based on what I think I need to do experimentally to hit the shot. See, like all 3 of those were just slightly cut to the left, which means that when I get down on the ball, I'm aimed, or my cueing is that I'm not pointed straight on the shot plane, I'm actually slightly to the right of that. But the correction for that is just to recognize eventually that you're just lined up not the right way. I think partly it looks to me as though the 5 ball needs to move just like a little bit to the left to be straight in, and I'm just hitting it to the middle of the pocket instinctively. Yeah, because that I hit it straight, but it almost didn't make it. So this sticker is actually not quite where it needs to be straight. Well, you can hit it straight and make it, but you're hitting the right side of the pocket, which is not really where you normally want to. But for purposes of this, it's more about if you can do it right. And if you miss the ball because of that, it's all good. Right? But then just hitting this straight in ball teaches you how to aim. You see, I hit a little bit of right spin, and that makes it come off. And it teaches you, it's like, well, once you can hit this shot repeatedly, and you're pretty much making it every time, now, any ball that's that distance away, all you have to do is just aim to that same imaginary spot that you were aiming to when it was straight in. And then now you should be able to make it with that same stroke. Because you don't need to spin the ball. You know, I felt like I was cueing right English on that. The point is, of course, that you have to eventually figure out how to do it now by like, okay, what is the system telling me I need to do? To me, I don't see that being like a trust thing when you're speaking of trust in aiming. And I think that over the course of your life, if you hit enough balls, you should be able to kind of see what you're about to do just through like repetition of paying attention to what happens when you just do whatever. Like if you just hit every shot all day today with left English and you don't play shape and you just try to hit left spin and make it, you know, then you're going to learn a lot about what left spin does to the shot from all these angles, you know, and maybe it's beneficial to do that, like even playing the straight in shot with left English to try to make it. How do you do that? You know, where you have to aim. You know, I don't even think I hit left English on it because it's so weird. You would never try to do that necessarily in a game, but then as a practice thing, it's actually a pretty interesting thing to try because it kind of teaches you what is the path of the cue ball actually, where we're not trying to make the ball all the time and then have a reaction when it doesn't go where we want. When you turn it into like an information acquisition thing, aiming becomes a lot simpler because there's really no goal other than to identify what you're doing, what happens when you do certain things. You're not trying to accomplish a goal of making a ball and having the cue ball go to a position. If you think of it like an experiment, then you can be like, okay, well if my goal is to hit the cue ball to this spot with spin, then now it's more of a question of like, well, what is it going to look like when that happens? Because if it doesn't happen, well, a lot of it's like, well, if I wanted to hit this ball with right English and then make the 7, which is basically straight in, how would I aim to make that happen? Because it's like not really a shot that I'd practice doing, right? So I would have to correct for like, if I hit right English, then it would swerve or squirt slightly to the left and then swerve back. So depending on how much right English I use, I basically have to aim maybe straight at it, and then it'll just correct on its own if I just use right spin. So I'll try that first. I'm just going to aim to hit it straight at it with right spin. See, so now what happened there is it squirted, but it didn't swerve back. So then if I set it up again with that information, and I hit it left, so now I got to aim maybe, instead of hitting it straight at it, I'm going to actually aim, I think it hit right here. So then if I aim here, like I'm hitting it straight, but then I'm using the right English, that should make it happen. And then I'll just, if it does work, then now I just have to memorize what happened. And so it did work. So now it took me 2 shots to figure out where to hit to shoot that shot that's imaginary, that it doesn't really seem like it's that productive, right? But then if I hit it again, now I'm not going to aim left anymore. Now I'm just going to aim to make it like I did the last time. Because I saw what happened when I hit it, and it made it. And I just had to remember what the angle was. I don't think of it like I'm aiming to hit it here. I'm thinking how I'm going to aim it to make it, because I already made it. And I had to aim in a certain place to make it, and then all you have to do is learn what that place is, and then you'll make it. And when you get down on the ball, and someone asks you, well, where do you have to line up? It's like, well, if I was analyzing what I was doing, I'd be like, well, aiming, roughly speaking, to hit right here. the thing is that when you're actually shooting the shot to make it go in the hole, and you need right spin on the cue ball, you can't be thinking about that. You have to be just lined up the way it is. And that's how you learn how to aim when you're not using a system. It's a trial and error thing. But you have to recognize that once you've done it, now all you have to do is replicate whatever you did, and it will happen again. It's just a question of how repeatable is my stroke. Like, I can set this ball up and hit it with roughly the same speed that I did on all those other shots, and they're in the same spin, and I'm getting roughly the same response. If you're hitting it with different speeds and powers and you're not being accurate with your cueing, you're not going to necessarily be able to learn it as quickly, which is why I try to get people to hit more straight-in balls so that they can witness what's happening and then learn faster, because they're repeating what they're trying more often, and they're not getting false positives as often. So that's kind of my thought with aiming is, you know, if you're trying to make this ball, your aiming is going to be completely dependent on the spin that you're going to apply. If I'm going to use follow, then I have to hit a different place. But to me, it's all about where you want to go that matters. If I'm trying to go forward with it, then there's a certain spin that needs to be on the cue ball when it hits this ball that will allow it to make the ball, and then, you know, if it has a little bit of follow or like right English, that'll make it like either turn with the banana action of the cloth friction, or the right English will use the friction of the rail cloth to turn it down table, and that will change the line. But then also, in order to make that happen, you have to aim to a different place, because you have to account for the throw and the squirt of the cue ball, which, if you're gonna like try to calculate it, you can eventually figure out, okay, you know, if I'm like trying to make this with right English, and maybe I'm trying to scratch, for instance, just to make it simple. Now, when I get down on this ball and hit it, then I'm not thinking about where the cue is actually lined up to make the ball. I have to just pretend that it's going to go in, because it's not really, the line is not a straight line. It's just like, well, how do I feel like I have to hit it to make it? You know, is really what you have to do, because it's like, if I get down on it like this, and this is the shot, then when I like look at it, I'm like, well, in reality, I'm aimed to hit it maybe into this spot right here. But you can't think about that while you're lining up on it. You got to think about the path of the cue ball. And it's a pretty easy thing if you just spend time like hitting the ball off center and seeing the way the ball turns. If that's all you're looking at, you can see it. And then you're really just using this ball as a measurement device to see how much action you get, you know. And that's part of it, where it's like you got to kind of like try to know what you're going to do, and then that tells you, okay, in order to like shoot that shot again, you know, I need to twist it off there. But I already said was like a little bit of high, makes it kind of banana forward, and then the right English. But then in order for that to do that, so it's like it's going to have like squirt out to the right and start turning back to the left at some point, you know. So it's roughly the same effect as that first shot, where I'm hitting this ball. If I apply the same effects to this ball that I shot with right English, and now I shoot this shot the same way, it's pretty much the same thing. But now I realize, okay, with that speed of stroke, and I'm lined up just that amount, it's going to do the same reaction that it did. You just don't have to like do all the math of realizing there's going to be throw and squirt and then the swerve back and all that stuff. You know, all you have to do is just witness it enough times to know that it's actually just something that always happens, on this particular cloth, of course, because this is the actual conditions of every table is slightly different, and that's what makes it hard. Is you can't trust that you're on the same cloth that you're going to be on every day. You have to relearn the adjustment and then just let it be in your subconscious, you know, more so than trying to correct. Like on this cloth I got to aim 2 degrees to the left, but on, you know, XYZ dude's cloth I got to aim 4 degrees to the left when I use spin. That is a difficult way of trying to play the game, because then you have to like do so much arithmetic all the time versus just like letting yourself see like through a couple reps. Like if I hit this ball with left English, you know, say I want to go forward, hit this rail and spin it to there for some reason, even though I could just go straight forward and do basically the same thing. How many shots will it take me to learn how to make that ball with the spin? You know, that's the question, you know. And if I just see it, like that doesn't look right. Like I gotta see the shot. I think from here, this looks better. And by like trying to correct, it doesn't really, for me, it doesn't really work. I just have to like pretend that when I hit the ball, that I know exactly where the ball is going to come off, because if you hit one right side or the other side, then all the other factors are in play, you know. But it's just experiential, really. You know, I see the ball come off the tip, and I see it travel down to its spot, and then when I hit it and it doesn't go where I wanted it to go, then I'm also paying attention to what actually happened, so that I can see that the angle that I actually hit it at was not what I thought it was, or maybe there's a reaction where the balls are gripping each other or they're not gripping, because if there's friction on the balls, then you're going to get thicker hits than if there's no friction on the ball. So, you know, paying attention to the balls and all that, you know, that's all part of the aiming, but you can't necessarily like easily incorporate all of that into thinking about it like a systems-based thing. It's more simple, I think, to just realize that, you know, by talking yourself through all the physics of the shot, you're really just describing what you'd want to just be able to visualize and have a feel for at the end of the day. So you're kind of like holding yourself in a spot where you got to perform enough experiments to not have to think about all that stuff, so that you can just feel it. And there's really no other way. You can use systems to help you identify what the physics are supposed to tell you, but ultimately the system is just supposed to be leading you to the place where you don't have to use it anymore. The system is a visualization aid or a tool. It is not the thing that actually makes you comfortable to make the ball. You know, if you do really well using systems, I think a lot of that comes down to like it allows you to trust your stroke more, because you're confident that you're actually seeing it the way that the system tells you to, and you're incorporating that into the way that you visualize the shot, and the way that it makes you feel inside, makes you feel more comfortable with that. But I think that as you like learn how the table plays, you won't need to do that as much. You just have to trust really that you know it, and then just practice without the system, and then see that actually you can make the balls. The system will help you when you're not feeling it or you can't see the angles quite, but the more you try to be automatic with ones that you're supposed to know, the better off you're going to be in the long run. And then you can always rely on the system later if you feel like you don't quite know it. But I think that you should always be striving to not use a system, to just make the ball, just see what's going to happen, and just try to like plan the shot in your mind so closely that you can see what has to happen with your cueing and how it's going to throw the ball and then turn it or not turn it, or you're using whatever English, and that you need the cue ball to be spinning a certain way when it hits the ball to react the way that you want it to, you know. And that's just like fine tuning. So that's basically my aiming thing. Are we past the hour?
6 minutes.
6 minutes. All right, let's break and run a rack.
We've got 2 people on.
Yeah, that was. Did that even make sense? What do you think? Y'all need to make a comment. Am I rambling or is this actually half purpose?
Typical Pacific Northwest behavior. for
Exactly.
kids.
Hey, you know what? It's all good.
Yeah.
End of the day, we're here to try to get better. All right, now I just gotta make this tough shot. So, one thing I'll tell everybody is I try to be very habitual about what I do. So, like, when I'm playing in a serious match, I always remove the magic rack, even though for this rack it's not really important. But what I'm trying to do is make more things automatic when I'm playing seriously so that I don't have to then think about it when I'm playing seriously. It's just a habit. One of those things is like moving the rack because you don't really want to deal with it. If the 9 was here inside the rack, which is sort of like normal, and you didn't move it, and then you're now shooting on a cut shot on the 9, and now you got to come over and then pick it up and then put it away, and then you come back to your business. You may have thrown yourself off versus of just doing it at the beginning, and then now you're like already looking at a significant challenge here. But now at least if I make the ball, I don't have to like throw myself off 5 shots down the road when I have to move that little thing. And if I just do it all the time, then it's just something that goes away. It doesn't exist. It never throws you off. So here I think I'm just going to try to punch a little bit of draw and come down back to this spot. Maybe if I draw back to like right here, then I can play forward and then this way. See, now I'm a little bit to where I might hit this rail, and I don't want to get frozen to it and then end up tough, so I'm going to make sure that I don't end up straight in no matter what I do, so that I don't have to worry about getting straight in and on the rail. If you take one of them away, then you can't have both of them. Both of them is the problem, so you can either like avoid it by like playing it. I think I can just play it a little bit harder actually and bump the rail, but I wouldn't be opposed to just drawing this ball either. The thing you don't want to do there is end up straight in on the rail, because then you're forced to shoot the 9 from like over here. That's no good. But if you end up either a little bit off angle or off the rail, you can either draw it or you can play into the rail. So you get a nicer angle on the 9. Yay, I did it.
You did it. And it's 7:59.
Alright. We're going to call it a night. Appreciate anybody that stopped by or checks this out later. Adding comments later on about stuff for future would be great. And have a great night. Thank you, everybody.